Hello and welcome to the Ask Weldon Show, episode 281. Today we are going to talk about how do I actually fix the things I know I'm doing wrong in game? What are some resources to get started on sports psychology for esport? And where do you find a program that has the daily mindfulness thing that you usually have in an app, but also has the one-on-one training that you usually have in a weekly session? Those are the questions. Let's jump into the show. Welcome again. If you're new here, my name is Weldon. I have a sports psychology and exercise psychology degree, and I am an esport coach and traditional sports coach. And in this show, I answer questions that you guys call in to anchor.fm/Weldon Green. You do that in your browser. It's probably the best spot. You can also do it in the phone on the Anchor app, if you can find the podcast on there. Sometimes it's difficult to find. And I also have a React series where, if you check out my YouTube, you can see that I essentially watch the behind-the-scenes content of either coaching or esport moments and give to you the scientific perspective of what's going on, both the good things and the bad things that are happening, whether it's conflict within a team or a win or a loss or a post-game speech. That is something that I used to do back in 2015 when I started, and I've started to pick it up again. So feel free to submit videos for that to me on Twitter, Discord, or the subreddit, and make sure to check it out. All right, let's jump into the first question for today from Eric.
Hey, Weldon. This is Eric. I've been coaching Apex as a hobby for a while now, and honestly, I enjoy it more than playing the game. It's gone pretty well, but I feel like my knowledge base is at a much greater level than my skill in game. I've done VOD reviews, and I can point out any of the thousands of misplays that I'm making. But when I go to fix them in game, I don't make any progress. So my question for you is, how do I take actionable steps towards applying my knowledge to my gameplay?
All right, thank you for the question, Eric. So this is a multifarious answer, or maybe a two-parter, a three-parter, or infinite parter. But basically, there's two things there's two different directions to take for this. One is I am not remembering to try to do it at the right time. And for that, you need to kind of set up goals and triggers. So an example of, let's say I have some tasks that I'm getting to the end of the day and I'm always remembering, oh shoot, I forgot I was going to do that after that phone call and I totally spaced. So one thing that you can do is you can schedule it in. And you can schedule it in lightly where you're just you pencil it on your calendar, or you can schedule it in heavily where you write it on your calendar. You think, okay, what are some of the things that could mess me up along the way? What are some of the things that are going to distract me? What are the things that are going to make me forget this? How can I remember it? And you kind of sweep away barriers and then add things that you think would allow you to naturally fall into that task. And that will then happen. You'll get to that moment in the day and you'll remember, partly because you spent so much time thinking about it and planning it, partly because of the barriers you swept away and the little setups that you put along with it to kind of tactically lead you into that task. And the same is true in sports. When you have some sort of thing that you're trying to apply in the game, you need to schedule it into the game, plan it, visualize it, take away things that are going to distract you from that. For example, leading in voice comms or whatever, or playing a champion that you don't know very well. And then to put enablers in the game, like a notification that pops up on your phone or something at a certain time to remind you that it's mid-game, it's been 8 minutes in the game, so now I got to start doing this task. Or maybe on your desktop, various things like that. And then the second thing that it could be is that you are remembering. So that's the first track. That's the first track that it could take. The second track that it could take is that you actually are remembering, but you just can't actually do it. You get there and either you can't execute on what your plan is and what your vision is, or you do it repeatedly over and over and over again, but you aren't getting any better. And then within that category of things, there's a whole bunch of stuff that can be going wrong. And that is literally all of coaching. All of coaching is how do we take this thing that you're practicing in the game, but you're not getting better at, and make you get better at? So unfortunately, it's hard to diagnose you over the internet and say this is the thing, right? But I think that kind of one of the main things is that crops up over and over again in the players that I coach is this kind of like I+1 thing. So if you are just only striving to do the thing that you are trying to do, then a lot of times you'll kind of like be rehearsing that, and you'll be rehearsing the wrong skill. So let's say that you're training harassing, or you're training harassing, and that is like when somebody is like CSing in the game, and you are like trying to last hit, and at the same time you're trying to harass them. You need to like actually practice harassing them. You need to get better at the skill. So you do it by just standing there in lane and like waiting for them to walk up and then like starting to hit them with your abilities. But that's not actually the skill, right? The skill is you need to actually harass them while also last hitting yourself, while also looking out for the jungler, while also warding, while also like tracking their cooldowns and abilities and trading appropriately, while also knowing the matchup, while also communicating with your team and leading. So like the skill you actually need to practice is like a very, very, very long and involved skill that involves all these other things. And so generally what people are doing is they're cutting out like too many things, and they're practicing like a little isolated skill. And then they're like, how come I never get any better? Well, they might be getting better at that isolated skill, but when they go into a real game, that's not the skill they're ever doing. They're not doing just like harassing them only with one factor involved. They're doing harassing them with all these other factors involved. So you need to make sure that you are learning the skill plus a bunch of stuff that you maybe can already do, or maybe you can do but you can't concentrate on it right, or you can do but with other stuff. And you need to like add those things so that you're overloaded. So you always feel like it's really hard to do this thing right now because I am concentrating on it while also concentrating on other things. Like it's challenging. So that is like the I+1 kind of tactic to overloading your brain and practicing the right skill. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that could be going wrong. It could be like you're not actually training the right skill. It could be that you don't have the knowledge. Typically, you need the model and the mirror. So you need the model of what the perfect execution of that looks like. So you need to have like either be watching pro VODs or people who have taught you like the appropriate skill, or like some sort of like vision in your brain of like the perfect execution of the model. And then you need the mirror, which is like you need to be able to see what you're doing and what you're doing wrong. And you need to be able to like essentially like, I guess watching VODs is probably the best way to handle that, you know. But if you can also post up after the game in your head and just be like, let me think about this for a second. What exactly did it look like? And then fact check yourself on the actual VOD. Like if you're like, it went down like this, I went here, I clicked here, this is what happened, this is what went wrong. And then you go look at the VOD and you're like, wow, that went down totally differently than I remember it. Or like, wow, that was exactly what I remember it. The best players that I have ever met, always have like a perfect game tape in their brain of like the whole game. And the worst pros that I have ever coached are the ones that like have the most inaccurate vision of like what just happened in the past. So I would say like, I would encourage you to exercise that ability. And that's kind of like the answer that I have. That's the best that I can do there. So let's jump into question number 2, which is from Hugh.
Hey, Weldon. I'm currently studying my honours degree for psychology and was wondering if you had any advice on what sort of like resources or like avenues to start investing my knowledge base in for esports psychology specifically. Because I'm someone who's really passionate about the field. Are there things that I can spend my time on now that will help me succeed in esports psychology in the future?
So, Hugh, I think that there's like 2 parts to this question. One part is like, how do I get better doing esports so when I get into esport, I'm actually prepared and ready to do a good job? And the second question is, how do I get a job in esport? And I've answered the second one like a lot in other shows, and also I don't think it's like exactly what you're asking, but the part or the nuances there. You were like essentially like, how do I find resources and prepare myself to be ready in esport? Well, for that you need a lot of networking and preparing your resume and things like that. And I'm just not going to go into that. So I'll talk to the spirit of your question, which is like, how do I make sure that when I walk in on my first day of a job in esport as a sports psychology trainer, that I'm ready, that the stuff that I have learned in traditional sport like fully applies over. And the answer is that there's nothing that you can do in the classroom at the university or books or courses out there that you can take that will set you up for success in that. First of all, I don't really think there's a lot of those in traditional sports psychology. And second of all, books wouldn't really help because what you're doing here is like behavior change on the one-on-one level or like the 5-on-1 level in a workshop. And for that, it's an art. Coaching is an art. It's not a science. There's an aspect of coaching that is an art, and that is like the coach's ability to create behavior change and generate that in a person that they're talking to. The coach's ability to like generate and create behavior change in a group of people, to read the room and figure out what it is that they need at that particular time to kind of like step forward. And that is a thing that you have to develop. I don't want you to walk into your first like clinic that you're putting on that you charged a lot of money for and kind of like it's appropriate for, let's say, the degree that you have and the resume that you presented, but you're like inexperienced and you go in and you give like the same sports psychology session that 100 other first time practitioners have given and that 100 these athletes have had 100 times, and that they're just like, this is completely useless to us. And you're like, if you were to look back 5 years later, you would have been like, yep, that was completely useless and a total waste of time and money. You should be doing that now. So for example, when I did that, I also had my first sessions. When I look back at them, it's not only embarrassing, but it's also kind of like cliche and like, wow, that was not so useful and very clunky. But they were free or like $15 an hour. So at that time I was, volunteering and doing the things that you should be doing, which is, contacting your college esports club and trying to like intern with them or like volunteer or just like going on summonerschool.com and like or summoner school subreddit on reddit.com and like contacting people and being like, hey, do you want some lessons? Like I can do free sessions for like 10 sessions. I don't know why this is beeping all the time. Sorry, that's my headphones plugging in and out because the plug is really loose. You should be like putting yourself out there in these applied settings where you have to take the theory of what you're doing and bring it very practical, and you should be learning all the tricks that it takes to hone in on what it is that person right there needs to hear from you today to like change their behavior, to improve, to take the next step. And that is something that you're going to be obviously constantly iterating on. It's not something that you're ever done doing, but you can get a lot of the beginner stuff out of the way so that your first workshops are like pretty stellar because you've done a lot. You've been in a lot of applied settings. So that's what I would recommend. And make sure to check out the Mac program. This is where I usually put in the advertisement here. I'm not speaking specifically to Hugh here, but now to the entire audience at large. The security certificate on my website has died, but if you click through it, you can advance past it, and I'm sure that I'll renew it here one of these days very soon. But you can go onto the website. It's a video program, which is currently still within the app on the sidebar. You can advance through the video program, the video course, but it also happens to be coming appified slowly but surely. So you can go in there and you can do like the first bunch of lessons and dabble around with the tech that we're trying to develop in there. Your purchase supports the development of that app right now because it is not launched. This is like definitely the beta version of that. But anyway, the course is on its 4th version. It's definitely quite refined now. The video course you're going to see in there is the 3rd version of the course, and it's kind of just like supplied as a resource for people who are in the app and waiting for content to go through it in its previous iteration and version while the new stuff is still coming. So make sure to check that out, and let's go into question number 4 from Ryan.
Hey Weldon, Morgan Mindfulness here, and my question for today is, what do you think is the biggest obstacle or reason why you'd be hard-pressed to find a mindfulness course online that is taught one-on-one by individuals while also creating the habit of doing it daily? I've noticed that pretty much every program, including the Mac program, is set up in where it's either weekly lessons or it's a daily app of some kind. In this case, the Mac program was a daily, I think it was about 8 weeks in which I was able to build the habit of meditation. How would you go about trying to hybridize those two things where you have the daily habit building, but still have that one-on-one attention of working with somebody?
So, I mean, this is really practical. The reason that these don't exist is because of money. Like, do you want a one-on-one training or a course where you have to pay somebody to. I mean, it's the same reason there's a yoga session every week. Yes, it would be better to have a yoga session with a yoga teacher every single day, but that would be prohibitively expensive for you, and like you would just kind of learn the thing, like you wouldn't make a lot of progress, right? If you go home and you do yoga every single day by yourself and then you come back after a week, you're better and the teacher has new things to say. But if they say one thing like the next day and then the same thing the next day, they're like, yep, the next day you're still working on that. They're just kind of like your assistant, your tag-along assistant, in your progress. So the reason that mindfulness courses like mine, for example, check in with you every week, or like, I guess my program actually like I took the weekly video and I cut it into 7 segments or 5 segments, and I had you do one every single day. So at least we were moving forward every single day. But the reason that like the program originally started as a week was because you would have to go home and do homework and kind of think through yourself and come back with progress. And then you would meet with the teacher having done some stuff. Right. And yeah. And then, so essentially like online apps are trying to cut cost and produce efficiency. So that's why it would be better, of course, to have everything every day, but you probably couldn't afford it, and the teacher couldn't afford to live that way if they charged the amount of money that people are willing to pay at that price point. And some people do that, like celebrities go to the gym or have their trainer show up every single morning and do a session with their trainer every morning, and that's all it is. It's just price. And the average price of this is like a weekly price. That's what people want to pay. So, how do you find those things on the internet? Well, I'm sure that you could find a trainer who would train you every single day at the right cost. And if you want to lower the cost, then you have a trainer that meets with you every week, and then you use an app in between. Or you do like my program, which has like a video course that is every single day as a lecture included. But like I said, it's a video course, right? Same thing, to like put the price range in the realm of like what it is that people will actually spend on, so that like more people can reach it, can have that same experience of having like a catered lecture every single day that progresses them through their expertise. All right, that's the show for you today. Make sure there's got to be a tile here. Is it this one? Yeah, make sure to submit your questions to the show, anchor.fm/Weldon Green. This show is powered off of your questions. The oxygen is the questions that you send in. And make sure to check out the Mac program at mindgames.gg. Make sure to click past the dead security certificate if I haven't renewed it yet. And I will see you guys next time.